Welcome to episode 216 of Your Career Podcast. Phil Strasser has dedicated his life to perfecting the art of cooking meat. He is known as the Meat Guy and is the author of Your Meat Mate, featured on the morning show on Channel 7 twice with his demonstration on how to cook sirloin steak and skirt steak. Phil certainly knows a thing or two about meat. To watch those videos and also to hear the sizzle of the steaks, click on the links in the show notes and you'll be able to find out exactly how you can cook your steaks to perfection. Now, there is nothing Phil does not know about meat, from identifying the different cuts of meat to choosing the best cut for different occasions and cooking each cut to perfection. Phil also creates mouth-watering marinades, sauces and dressings to complement his meals. As Phil says, sauces make the meals, dressings make the salads. This is the first time I have the honor of having a chef on Your Career Podcast, and I'm delighted to share with you Phil Strasser's interview about his culinary journey and what fuels his passion for cooking. In this interview, enjoy listening to the joys and challenges of working in a commercial kitchen, being a home chef, and running your own food business, but not all at the same time. Of course, that might be a little too much for anybody, yes? Now, we also chat about different recipes, and I have to say, our conversation will get your mouth watering. I first met Phil over 10 years ago when he came to me initially as a client to help grow his food business. Now, fast forward 10 years on, and as you know, COVID hit the industry hard, and we reconnected as it was time for him to leverage his reputation as the meat guy into a new role. And now, having made a successful career transition, Phil is the creator of the delicious pies at Craig Cook, the Natural Butcher, and he continues to creatively tantalize our taste buds with his culinary treats. Now let's welcome Phil to the show.
Hi, Jane. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
I've been looking forward to interviewing you, Phil, because I've known you for a little while now, and I've wanted to get you on this podcast for a long time to talk about your career journey, because I haven't had a chef on the show before. So how about, just to kick us off, tell me about your early career aspirations when you were a little boy.
Yes. Well, I developed an interest in cooking when I was cooking with my mum and my grandmother. We spent a lot of time in the kitchen. It was a lot more than food. It was conversation. It was just a connection with my mum and my grandmother, but it did centre around food. And I had such a positive vibe from it that I developed an interest in cooking. So when I cook, it just reminds me of my mum and my grandmother.
Yeah. Actually, that's interesting that you say that, because so often the things that we like, and the things that tend to appeal to us, it's that feeling, isn't it? Story about someone who started their own business, and it was a pie business, and they were baking pies and thinking that they wanted a business, and it was all about selling the pies. But no, it wasn't. This person wanted the business because the pies reminded her of when she was growing up. So being a chef, it's that warm, wonderful feeling of, being with your mum and your family.
Exactly. That's a huge thrill or a reward for me to see people enjoy the meal. Of course it's work beforehand, but when they sit down and eat, it's a wonderful feeling knowing hopefully they've enjoyed the evening.
So I have so many friends who are foodies and they love really good food. And for those who can see the video, they can see that Phil's in his chef's whites and it says Your Meat Mate, what you specialize in. But with regard to your career journey, so you knew you loved food and cooking from a young age. So how did you get to where you are today?
Throughout my cooking journey, as I was cooking meat, I developed an interest in how meat works. It's quite a science to cook meat, and to start it from its raw state to its finished state, there's techniques and there's skill and some knowledge involved. And if we get that right and you get good at it, it's a really rewarding feeling before you cut into that meat, whether your steaks or your
Was there a bit of a journey before you got to where you are now?
I guess it goes back to my mum and my grandmother. We ate a lot of red meat at home. My grandmother cooked such wonderful steaks, so I developed a real interest in steaks. I had a real positive experience with meat throughout my upbringing.
So what was your first role as a chef?
In the 80s, I was helping the other chefs because I was in my training period. It was quite comfortable because I had always people to fall back on. I learned a lot with skills and techniques. But in a commercial environment, I learned a lot as well, because in a commercial cookery is very different from cooking at home. It's there's deadlines to meet, there's systems in place, and it's a lot happening. It's exciting if all goes well. There's a lot of adrenaline in the kitchen, and that can be a really positive. That's a great experience if all goes well.
Yeah, I watch those TV shows, as so many of us do. Like Gordon Ramsay and Hell's Kitchen and all of those sorts of things. And it seems so stressful to me when I watch those shows, because it's people who are running restaurants and things are going wrong, in the kitchen, and everyone's running around and tempers are flaring. And I always wonder, how realistic is that? I mean, it must be really quite stressful, or very excitingly stressful within a commercial kitchen.
When we're falling behind, that can be horrible. But somehow it all sorts itself out at the end. We know it's going to come to an end, and somehow it sorts itself out.
And as long as everybody gets their meals,
exactly,
they're happy with the taste at the end of the day, then that's good.
Exactly.
And I know that, from working within a commercial kitchen, you made some transitions, and then you started your own business, and you were making some amazing sauces and marinades.
Oh, thank you.
Yes? So tell me a little bit about that. How did that come about?
Yes. In the 90s, I had takeaway food shops. So I veered away from commercial restaurant kitchens, and I had takeaway salad bars. And so we served a variety of salads. And when we sold our last shop in North Sydney, I developed an interest. Look, what I thought was creating terrific salads had a lot to do with the sauce, had a lot to do with the dressing, as with all other meals. Sauces really make the meal. Dressings make the salads. So I thought I'd love to create my own range of sauces and salad dressings and marinades, because I know they make a huge difference to a meal, to a salad. A meal can be ordinary, but it can be made extraordinary with that liquid. If that liquid's done right, I really wanted to develop a range. I know that could really enhance what could otherwise be an ordinary meal. It could make a meal terrific.
So what's the range of the sauces that you created?
I had some salad dressings. I had some Moroccan-style dressings, poppy seed dressing. I'm reintroducing in my new job the sauces that I made, the barbecue sauces, Creole smoky barbecue, Chamula smoky barbecue, and an ordinary smoky barbecue, but it's got a bit of a bite to it. And I'd love to introduce another one, the Chipotle smoky barbecue.
Oh, yum.
And
and you can actually use those marinades on everything, vegetables, fish, chicken, meats, everything. Oh, how lovely.
Exactly. And
so you're quite creative.
Oh, I love to be creative. I love to experiment and trial and test it for its flavour, for its texture. The texture is just as important as the flavour, because if the texture's not right, it will not sit on the food well, and it has to cook with the food. Yeah.
I was wondering, so when you create your own sauces, and you have to have them manufactured, created in bulk, because you have to be able to supply all of the businesses that order from you. How do you handle that?
If the volume's very big beyond my capacity, I'll take it to a contract manufacturer. So they have a kitchen perfectly set up, the temperature and the humidity are all set up, and they follow it with my formulations or the recipes, and they multiply it by however many, and they go ahead and produce, and it's all automated, so they're quite quick at it.
And so are your recipes secret?
First I thought they must be secret, and then over the years I think, no, I'm sure if I said I did this particular sauce people can do that anyway. So it's not so much a secret.
Oh, that's nice that you share it, because the thing is that most of us get a little bit lazy as well. We think, I can't be bothered. If we can just buy Phil's sauce, we'll just buy it and use that instead of having to faff about getting lots of different ingredients. So that's one aspect of your work and your previous business as well. But then you became, as we mentioned earlier, the meat guy. You're known as the meat guy, and I have in my hot little hands your book, The Meat Mate, which is
Thank
lovely.
you, Jane.
And within this book, it's so educational. You really teach people about beef and lamb and pork and everything, all the different cuts, and the recipes in here are quite amazing. And with us, living in Australia,
Thanks, Jane.
Australians are, they're barbecue crazy, aren't they? And they're known for their incredible barbecue finesse and techniques. And so this book, especially for Aussies, and I would think in America also, because, they like to have their barbecues as well, it would be so valuable. And, I bought 5 copies over Christmas.
I know.
Gave them away.
Thank you.
Not only because it's so good, and I really, I love, the cover design and the way that it's all put together is lovely, and some nice pictures of you too. There you go.
That's me.
In your chef's outfit too, that I'm showing on the video. So tell us a little bit about why did you decide to write this book?
Well, I teach a couple of times a term. So I teach meat. I teach seafood as well. But from my teachings, receiving a good response to the extent that I thought, well, if the content is worthy, I should put, in a nutshell, I thought I will put it in a book. So I wrote what I teach during the day, and I put it all in the book, and I added recipes to it.
You know what I really like in this book is that it's not just a recipe book. It's got all this detail as well about all the herbs and spices that you can use, and dry roasting spices and fresh herbs, and how to use a mortar and pestle, grinding herbs. All of this is so valuable because it's not just to do with meat, it's to do with everything else as well.
Yeah, everything.
And even what to do when you go to a butcher's and what to ask for, braising and everything. So how did you get so knowledgeable?
I learned at TAFE. That was part of my qualifications. I read a lot and I wanted to really understand how meat works, whether we're roasting, grilling, pan frying or braising, or regardless of the cut. How do we get the best outcome per meat? And that's when I came to the conclusion that meat really is divided into 2, tough cuts and tender cuts, and they're both fantastic. Tough cuts are terrific. I know it doesn't sound terrific. They're tough, they're cheap, tough and challenging, but in my opinion, they can many times outrun the tender cuts. If they're done properly, you end up with a fantastic outcome. They're naturally flavourful, and they're incredibly tender, and you've extracted gelatin from the meat and into the sauce, then you can end up with a terrific outcome. The meat's tender, it's got a lot of character, you've got gelatin as part of your meal, and it's a great result. So you can get terrific results from your tough cuts.
I remember when I was growing up in Hong Kong, one of my favourite dishes was beef brisket with noodles.
Yeah.
And brisket is a very tough cut, isn't it? It was very, very tender and very flavoursome. So I think even those tough cuts, if you slow cook them, then it's still very nice.
They're beautiful, yeah. Brisket is a perfect example. It is incredibly tough, rock hard. But if we cook it long and slow in the oven, with the right liquids, then it breaks down beautifully and end up with really, really nice and tender. And the book explains why that happens, and the book explains how you can get a really terrific outcome. I've got some tips and techniques in there to get a really terrific braising outcome.
Yeah, because you tell us about braising and roasting and pan frying and when you sear something briefly. Or whatever it is. But obviously the technique that you use will depend on the cut of meat that you have, yeah?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Certain cuts are suitable for certain cookery methods. The tough cuts are great for slow roasting. Some of the tough cuts are good for slow roasting. They're all great for braising. And the tender cuts are good for roasting and cut into steaks, grilling and pan frying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, serving a meal with, say, the condiments and the vegetables and how you might cook the vegetables to go with, a certain main ingredient of your meal, what are the vegetables that you think really sting when they sit on a plate?
The most common, colour is a big consideration, let alone the vegetable, but potatoes go, greens, mushrooms, they go. When putting meat with vegetables, I know we're trained to think of a variety of cookery methods as well on the one plate. I mean, more than one cookery method. For example, if we've got a steak, so we pan fried or grilled it, then perhaps we can add a boiled or steamed accompaniment such as the greens. So greens are terrific because greens should be cooked quickly, whether steamed or boiled. So that's a reason why that makes a great accompaniment. Plus, there's a lot of nutrients in a green vegetable.
I have to admit, I love vegetables. I love fruit, and I have an awful lot of that. But it is very nice to have a steak every once in a while, or else like a lovely beef bourguignon, which I find is really rich and warming, especially when it's very cold too. Now your career journey from dreaming about becoming a cook and a chef, and then running your own business, making your own sauces, supplying to many outlets in Sydney. You've now made another career transition, haven't you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm excited. I start on Monday with Craig Cook Butchery as their chef. It's a chain of butcher shops, and I'll be responsible for their pies and their stocks and sauces and eventually ready-made meals. So it's what I love to do. It's all about meat, and I'm looking forward to being part of their team.
Yeah. So, how wonderful. How wonderful is this? Because I remember when we were talking about this before with regard to making a career transition, you really wanted to be within a team environment, because running your own business sometimes can get a little bit lonely because it's all on you. But now being within a supportive environment, within a butchery, and having a team who love what you love as well, that's going to be so rewarding, isn't it?
Yes, I think I am. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I'm looking forward. I love working with butchers too. I think they're all so nice. They're all down to earth. They're dedicated to the industry. They're dedicated to their products, and so I'm looking forward to it very much.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, I wish you success, because they're lucky to have you, because you're going to get really creative, aren't you? And I'm sure that you'll
thank you, Jane.
Lots of new sauces and marinades and just wonderful things that will whet everybody's taste buds. And
thank you. I hope so.
I can highly recommend people to get your book as well. I will have the link to your book in my show notes on janejacksoncoach.com/podcast, and you'll be able to find Phil's interview and all the links to find Phil as well. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with? Any gems of wisdom?
My advice is if you're a meat lover and you love to cook meat, feel free to experiment. If you're going to pan fry or grill on a high heat to get that nice crispy brown exterior, and then lower the heat to gently cooking the interior of the meat, of your steak, and that's the key. It comes in two parts. High heat to get a nice brown exterior, and lower the heat to gently cook your interior. And the braised dishes, cook them long and slow and extract that gelatin into the meat and into the sauce. For those of you who love meat, love cooking meat, good luck on your meat cooking journey. Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you for sharing your story as well, and your cooking tips. If you enjoy Your Career Podcast, please hop over to iTunes and leave a review, because that's how we get to reach more people. And if you need help in your career, go to www.thecareersacademy.com online, where you'll be able to find lots of online programs as well as one-on-one coaching with me. See you soon.